You are listening to the Navigating Adult ADHD podcast with your ADHD coach and expert, Zena. Hello, my friend. Welcome back. We're navigating adult ADHD today. How are you doing? I hope you are well and warm. I want to say warm because holy shit, it is freezing today. Oh, I cannot wait for us to defrost here in New Zealand. So today we are talking about oxytocin. I have had so much fun doing a deep dive on this. If you have listened to the podcast for a little while, you know I like to geek out. I'm like researching and learning things, and this has been so fun. So oxytocin is commonly referred to as the love drug. You may have heard it called the cuddle chemical, or the thing that people mention when they tell you that hugs are basically good for you. And yes, oxytocin, it is definitely involved in things like touch and bonding and affection and connection. But it's not just a chemical that appears when somebody, gazes lovingly into your eyes like some, romantic movie. Oxytocin also plays a role in how safe we feel when we're with other people, which is super interesting. It plays a role in how connected we feel with others and how we respond socially and how our bodies deal with stress. Now, oxytocin also communicates with dopamine, and it's kind of helpful to think of it like they are cousins. They are closely related, so they are cousins. So this is where things start to get really, really interesting for those of us with ADHD, okay? Because dopamine is involved in motivation, attention, reward, our ability to get up, get moving, get shit done. And those of us with ADHD, we have a little bit less dopamine. One of the ways I like to explain this is if you were to imagine that our neurotypical friends, the people without ADHD, they wake up with half a tank of gas each day. Those of us with ADHD, we wake up with only a quarter of a tank, okay? We have a lower baseline level of dopamine than our friends without ADHD. Okay, so what that does is it impacts our ability to get shit done. It impacts our motivation, our attention, our focus. Now, oxytocin is involved in connection, in trust, and in social safety. And these systems don't operate completely separately in little, different little offices of your brain. They actually talk to each other. They send emails, they have meetings, maybe they've even got a group chat, okay? They are close. Like I said, I think it's quite helpful to think of them as cousins. So this means connection can help something feel more rewarding. So if I was to put that another way, when you experience this magical chemical feeling, this oxytocin release, when you experience that, when that chemical is released in your brain, you can also increase your dopamine levels. Okay, so where one goes, the other one may follow. Good news for people with ADHD, trust me. So for example, the moment your best friend's name lights up on your phone and you immediately smile, or that satisfied feeling that you get when your partner laughs. The buzz you get from telling this really dramatic retelling of a story and watching this person's face just totally change and, turn into a smile. The feeling of walking away from a coffee date with a good friend thinking, damn, I needed that, right? That is our brain and body responding to connection and producing this warm, fuzzy feeling that is oxytocin, right? We're having that released into our body and it feels really nice. Now, for those of us with ADHD who we know, right, with people with ADHD, we can struggle with emotional regulation, with our ability to sort of respond to our emotions in healthy ways. We can struggle with impulsivity, motivation, confidence, even relationships, and feeling really misunderstood. So understanding oxytocin and hacking it, which I'm going to talk about doing, can have a really positive impact on our ADHD symptoms and how we feel, right? So, of course, I want us to explore that today, my friend. We're going to talk about what oxytocin actually is, my God. I feel like as soon as I start talking to you, some days my words just forget to form. Like, it's like my brain goes too fast and I've already said the sentence in my head, but I'm like, hang on, I haven't actually said it out loud yet. And I feel like that's happening today. So yes, we're going to explore what oxytocin is. We're going to explore how oxytocin and dopamine work together and why that matters and why that's really important for us. We're going to talk about why safe connection can be really helpful for ADHD brains and how we can actually deliberately create more moments of connection in our everyday life without having to join a commune or hug strangers or become one of those people who holds eye contact for a deeply unsettling amount of time. Okay? We're not doing any of that. We all know that person. As always, my friend, this is not going to be some hardcore neuroscience lecture, although I did fully enjoy doing the research. There's going to be no exam. You're not going to be asked to label a brain diagram at the end of this. No. In true Xena style, we are going to keep this simple, practical, and very relevant to life as an adult with ADHD. Okay? So, what the heck is oxytocin? Just like dopamine, oxytocin is also a chemical in the brain. Okay? And this one, when oxytocin is released into your system, it helps you feel close to other people. It gets released when you hug someone, when you hold hands with someone, when you cuddle your dog, when you pat your cat. I probably should have said that round the other way. When you pat your dog and cuddle your cat, it makes a bit more sense. When you laugh until you cry with a friend. When you have a really good conversation with somebody. Or even when somebody simply makes you feel seen and understood. Or even just smiles at you. Okay? That is when oxytocin can be released. And oxytocin is like invisible friendship glue. It helps people feel close to each other and it reminds your brain, hey, I'm safe, I'm with my people. Which actually brings me to an important bit. Because oxytocin isn't just about love or romance, although yes, there is a lot of it that is being released in romantic settings and when you are, dating and, in love with somebody. It's really about feeling safe with other humans. So your partner, your best friend, your kids, your neighbor, your dog, a stranger at the supermarket who smiles. Oxytocin is involved in trust, in bonding, in social connection, and as I said, our sense of safety with other people. And I really like the way that neuroscientist TJ Power describes it. He describes oxytocin as the connection chemical. Because that's really how I think about it. If I think about, dopamine is the motivation chemical in our brain, but oxytocin is the connection chemical, right? Dopamine helps us pursue, get motivated. Oxytocin, it helps us to connect. And as humans, we need both. If you were to imagine that dopamine is the accelerator pedal in your brain, okay? Oxytocin is the seatbelt. One helps you move through life, but the other helps you to feel safe while you're doing it, okay? So I want to start by inviting you to consider how connected you feel to the people around you, the people in your life. Do you have high or low levels of oxytocin? So if you have low levels of oxytocin, there are two key symptoms that you may feel. The first one is feelings of loneliness or isolation. Okay? And the second key symptom is lack of confidence. So low self-esteem, low confidence, or sort of lack of self-belief. And this is something that as people with ADHD, we often experience, and it's no, what's the word I want there? It's no surprise given that the research has shown by age 10, a child with ADHD has already heard 20,000 more negative messages than their peers. And of course, that's going to impact how we feel about ourselves, our self-esteem. But also, we are living today in an incredibly unusual time. We are in this society that is heavily social media based. So we are scrolling regularly through these social platforms, and the brain does what the brain does. It compares. It just naturally compares us to other people, to our peers, to, people living lavish lifestyles, what have you. And that can really have a negative impact on the voice in our head that doubts us, that tells us we don't have what it takes, that we aren't there yet, that other people are doing better than us, etc. So there are some studies that are showing how low levels of confidence is becoming increasingly common because of this social media-based society that we live in today. I found that to be super fascinating and honestly, no surprise. But if we were to think back to how we got oxytocin in those caveman times, we were living in tribes. So we were, all together. We weren't in our own individual houses. So today you can, live by yourself. You can even work alone. Maybe you work remotely from home and you have very little contact with other people. When you go to the supermarket, you might have your earbuds in, be on your phone. When you sit down and have coffee with somebody, you're scrolling on your phone. There is way less oxytocin being released in our modern world in comparison to, living in these tribes, waking up together, doing activities and things together all throughout the day. It is such a different time that we live in, right? Literally, like I said, we can have our cell phones at the dinner table today and have very little interaction with other people and sometimes be completely oblivious to it. So there are 4 causes of a low oxytocin. Number 1 is a lack of social connection. And as I was just saying, that's so easy to sort of fall into that in the modern world that we live in today. The second cause of low oxytocin levels is using our phones during times of social connection. I was reminded that many years ago, I had a friend, this was back when I was working in the travel industry, I had a friend who was over from Australia. She'd flown back to New Zealand and she wanted to have lunch with me. So she came into my workplace and we went out to lunch together and I was practically glued to my phone. And I remember I was in my sort of mid-20s. I didn't think anything of it at the time. And I remember her saying to me, "Hey, are you going to put your phone down and talk to me?" And I've always had that stick in my mind because, yes, what I was doing was really, really rude, but I also thought at the time it's just so normal. I kept checking my work emails and checking my messages and just looking at my phone. So that use of phones during times of social connection, we've noticed that one of our boys now comes to the dinner table and he likes to have his earbuds in and be listening to music. And he'll take one out so he can sort of listen to us, but he'll still keep his other one in. And it's interesting to think about, that and how much social connection he's having as like a teenage boy. He's 15, he's, wants to be glued to his cell phone 24/7, which he's not alone in, like so many of us do. All right, so the third cause of low oxytocin is a poor relationship with yourself. So I liked, and that actually is very good, ties into number 4, which is self-criticism, basically speaking to yourself like an asshole, right? If you speak to and treat yourself like an asshole, if you've got a lot of, negative inner talk, self-talk, then the relationship you have with yourself likely will not be a great one. You will have poor boundaries, you won't respect yourself, you won't treat yourself well, etc. Again, this is something that can be really common for those of us with ADHD. I have shared with you before on the podcast how I tried to hate my way to happiness, how I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror. That's the sort of relationship I used to have with myself. Okay, so again, the 4 common causes of low oxytocin: number 1, a lack of social connection; number 2, the use of phones during times of social connection; number 3, a poor relationship with yourself; and 4 is self-criticism. So when your oxytocin levels are high, you will feel more connected with the people in your life. You're also going to experience a greater level of self-belief and self-confidence. Okay, so what does all of this have to do with ADHD specifically? This is where it gets really, really interesting. Okay, in researching this, I discovered that there are 4 four key reasons why oxytocin really matters for those of us with ADHD. Okay. Number one, emotional regulation. Oxytocin supports feelings of calm and safety, which can help us to lower our emotional outbursts and the intense negative feelings or mood shifts that we can experience. Okay. We know as people with ADHD, we can experience our emotions really quickly. Our feelings can be very intense and very sort of physical. And we don't just feel annoyed, right? We're not simply feeling annoyed. Our whole nervous system is put on a high-vis vest and declared an emergency. We can go from fine to fucking furious, right? We can go from fine to hurt, panicked, or overwhelmed before a more reasonable part of our brain has even had a chance to look at other options, right? But safe connection can help settle that response. So there is something that it's called co-regulation. And co-regulation is what happens when another person's calm presence helps our body to dial down our emotional response and find its way back towards calm. Okay? So that is one of the reasons why this really matters for those of us with ADHD, because it actually helps us when it comes to emotional regulation. Okay. Number two is social relationships. So oxytocin actually helps us to read social cues, okay, and helps us, when this chemical is released in our system, it helps us with reducing our social anxiety, because if we're feeling safe around other people and connected to them, right, that can help us to turn down the dial on the social anxiety. So it helps adults navigate friendships and partnerships, okay? The third reason why oxytocin, key reason why it matters for those of us with ADHD, is impulse control. There is research that actually suggests that oxytocin can help keep our impulsive reactions in check. So when we're feeling this nice, warm, fuzzy, safe, connected chemical, it helps us to reduce our impulsivity. Okay? And number four is because where oxytocin goes, dopamine can also follow. Okay? And as I explained before, as adults with ADHD, we have lower levels of dopamine. Okay, where our neurotypical friend wakes up with half a tank of gas, we wake up with a quarter of a tank, right? And that's just an oversimplification, okay? That is not by any means a researched thing, a technical thing. That's just a really easy way of thinking about it, okay? And we know dopamine plays a really key role in our motivation, focus, and attention. So put simply, when we increase our oxytocin levels, we can also increase our dopamine levels, which then helps our ability to focus, to pay attention, to increase motivation. Hello, win-win. Who doesn't want to feel safe, connected, and motivated, right? I know I do, for sure. So while the research is still emerging here, okay, there are some studies that are out there, and there is, like I said, more that are coming. But there are studies that show healthy social contact, which releases this chemical, this oxytocin, this nice, warm, fuzzy feeling, can naturally help to raise low dopamine levels, which are what people with ADHD experience. Like I said, my friend, winning, okay? Now, I also want to be really clear that this is not about having hundreds of friends, okay? When we talk about connection, I do not mean that you need to become wildly social and attend, networking events 5 nights a week and invite the whole neighborhood over for brunch. No. Some of us, myself included, would probably rather lick a supermarket trolley. Yes, I said that. Connection is not the same thing as being an extrovert. Thank God, because I am so introverted. It is not about collecting people like Pokemon cards. Unless you're extroverted and you want to do that, by all means, my friend, go for it, okay? It is about the quality of the relationships that you do have. So there is an ongoing Harvard study of adult development. It's I think it is the longest running study ever. It's basically about happiness, like it just tracking adult life and happiness. It's a fascinating thing. Anyway, across the decades of research, I think it's been going about 85 plus years now, one of the clearest findings in this study has been that the quality of people's relationships is a huge determinant in their happiness, okay? So the quality of people's relationships is strongly connected with how happy they are as they age and right throughout their lives. But also the quality of their relationships has a massive impact on how their brain functions as they age. Okay, so if I was to put that really simply, it's not about having a shit ton of friends. It's about having some really good quality relationships, good quality people in your life that, you can connect with and feel safe with and rely on, what have you. That increases happiness and helps our brains function better. Fascinating. So anyway, 2 really interesting finds about oxytocin and how we get it. Okay, number 1. Studies show that when we socialize in natural environments, we connect more deeply, and there is also the benefit of other brain chemicals being released, other chemicals in our brain that feel really fucking good, okay? So if you think about going for a walk with a friend, right? Let's say you're walking along the beach, or maybe you go through the bush. You're out in nature. Before you know it, you're having conversations that you maybe wouldn't have had just sitting across the table from each other. We often find it easier to open up. It's easier to laugh, easier to simply just be when we're out in nature. And it's not that the conversation isn't, helping. Like, the conversation's great. But your brain is also getting this chemical cocktail, okay? It's not just the conversation, it is also this chemical cocktail. So you're getting, number 1, oxytocin from the connection, okay? Then, in part of this cocktail, you're getting dopamine from doing something enjoyable and maybe even a little bit novel, okay? You're getting oxytocin, you're getting dopamine. You're also getting serotonin in this cocktail, right? Serotonin from being outdoors, moving your body and feeling more settled. Serotonin is something that is such a good feeling thing. Like, it really supports increasing our mood, helps us to feel good, okay? Also helps with sleep. And then the 4th thing in this cocktail, this delicious cocktail, my friend, is endorphins. Right, we get endorphins from the movement itself, which can help to, again, it supports like lifting mood and reducing stress. So it's one of the reasons so many people finish a walk with a friend, right, just going for a walk in nature and think, wow, I feel so much better. Right, every time I go for a walk with a friend, I always feel great. And it's not just the walk, it's not just the friend, it's not just the conversation, it's all of those things working together to produce this beautiful chemical cocktail. Okay, so one of these really interesting finds from this research is that studies actually show when we socialize in natural environments, out in nature, we connect more deeply and we get the benefit of those other brain chemicals. Number 2, the second really interesting find was the difference between texting and calling. And this actually didn't surprise me at all. So studies show that simply messaging, sending like a text message, does not release any oxytocin at all. Okay? But hearing that person's voice, that will produce oxytocin. Now, this makes a lot of sense when we think about it, because when I think about reading a text message, it can be misinterpreted. We don't know the tone of voice. We can't see their facial expression. We don't, know what they necessarily mean by that. Whereas when we can hear their voice, we know our people. We already know, what that tone means. We know if they're being sarcastic, if they're being silly, if they're being funny, if they're happy, if they're fine, if they're not fine. We know that stuff, right? I was thinking the word fine is a very controversial word in our household. So if I was to text my partner, Emma, and tell him I'm fine, what does that mean? Am I genuinely fine? Am I annoyed? Am I being sarcastic? Am I trying not to cry? Am I secretly really fucking angry? He has no idea. Now imagine I say that same word out loud, like I'm fine, right? Or I could be, I'm fine. I'm fine, right? Like the tone of the voice, totally different meanings. right? Same word, completely different meanings. So our brains are wired to pick up on the tone of the voice, the laughter, the warmth, the pause, the emotion that's behind it. That's how we know that somebody is, one of our safe people, that we're safe with them. That's how we know what they really mean when they're talking. That's how we build that connection. It's also why it's so easy to misread or misinterpret a text message, right? How many friendships, relationships, family arguments have started because somebody read a message in the wrong tone? Because I know I've done it. Now, voice notes were not specifically studied as part of this, but if the key part here is hearing that person's voice. So therefore, I think it's safe to say that a voice note is going to create that same oxytocin and connection that a text message wouldn't, right? So of course, a phone call, a FaceTime, a voice note, when you hear their voice, see their facial expressions, if you're FaceTiming, hear their laugh, all of those little human cues help your brain go, oh yeah, this is one of my people, right? And it releases this nice, warm, fuzzy feeling chemical, oxytocin. So the next time you're about to send a 5-paragraph text message to one of your friends, maybe ask yourself, could this be a 2-minute phone call or even a quick voice note? But sometimes that tiny little change, and I've really been thinking about this lately, that little change can make you both feel a whole lot more connected. So I wanted to share with you some super simple, easy, practical ways to increase your oxytocin that actually don't require you necessarily that don't require any more time from you in your day at all, okay? Number 1 is removing phones or putting them on flight mode, up the other way on the table if you need to have it with you. So if you can put your phone in a bag or, in a pocket or just, leave it in the car when you're having coffee with a friend, making it so that you can't distract yourself and break that connection, break that oxytocin release. Because when we have them with us and they light up on the, they might even be on silent, but something lights up and we look away and we start, opening our phone, that distracts from that connection and that oxytocin. So that's a really simple, easy one, especially like at dinner tables. If you sit down and have family meals, we sometimes do that, not all the time, okay? But that is just such a super easy one, right? Removing phones when you are spending time with people. The next one is complimenting people, like genuinely, right? If you love somebody's smile, saying, hey, your smile's so infectious, or I love your style, right? Or it could be, you're so inspiring, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm really inspired. Or the other day at Toastmasters, I said to somebody, you tell such great stories. I love how you bring your stories to life, right? You are so generous. I love your sense of humor, right? Just doing that with somebody, we both get to feel good. You get to feel good at giving that. You get this oxytocin release and they do as well. Even smiling at people. This one's so easy. Smile at strangers on a walk, in a coffee shop, in the supermarket. That too can release oxytocin. Another thing that helps to increase this oxytocin release is when we're having a conversation with somebody is to switch from listening to reply or respond, right, to listening to connect. This is something I can find quite difficult to do when I'm having a conversation, especially with my partner. I'm ready to reply. I'm ready to rebut or whatever. But if you think about it as I want to practice listening to connect and create connection rather than listening to respond. The next one is making eye contact, but I want to put a caveat on this because I know that too much eye contact or certain eye contact can be difficult for those of us with neurodivergence. So it's not about, staring continuously into somebody's eyes and thinking, should I be looking at the left one or the right one? Am I doing it right? No, that gets creepy, okay? But eye contact is shown to increase the release of oxytocin. For me, I like to, look at somebody in the eye and then I will often look away, typically to the left side as I'm thinking. That's like my thinking space. And I will think about what they're saying and sort of, mull it over in my brain and then look back again. But again, having some eye contact can really help with that release of oxytocin. The next thing that can help, practically to increase this is just being curious, which is something those of us with ADHD are really good at, is asking a lot of questions and being genuinely interested and curious, right? Other people love to talk about themselves. They really do. So when you show genuine interest and ask them questions, that helps them to see that you are interested, that you have been listening, and that you are paying attention, and that creates that release between you both. And the last one is connecting physically, right? Giving hugs. I love to hug people. I hug all of my friends. Like, I'm a hugger, right? I hug people when I meet them for the first time. But even if you're not a hugger, sometimes just, patting somebody on the shoulder, just reaching across and just, giving them a little tap on the arm, that sort of a thing, if that's something you're comfortable with, that physical touch, that physical connection can, again, help with this production of oxytocin. So I want to offer you a challenge, my friend. For the next 7 days, I challenge you to deliberately interact with people each day in an effort to increase your own oxytocin. Now, if you are single, if you live alone, I want to offer a few ways of what that could look like, because I promise you it can easily be done. Okay? Number 1, smile at a stranger. Okay? Number 2, give your coworker a compliment. Number 3, phone a family member. 4, have coffee with a friend. Remember, keep your phone on silent or put it away. Number 5, go for a walk in nature with somebody. Number 6, ask the person at the checkout, or it could be, at a cafe or wherever, how their day is going. How's your day going so far? I don't remember what number we're up to. I think it's 7. Send a voice note to a friend or a family member. And bonus, hug someone. Okay, so again, it totally can be done regardless of your relationship status, my friend. So I challenge you to do that. I challenge you to work on increasing your oxytocin and notice how different you feel as a result of doing that. And like I said, you might also get the benefit of some dopamine increase there too. So before we wrap up today, I want to leave you with one final thought. When we have ADHD, we spend a lot of time trying to increase our dopamine, either knowingly or unknowingly, okay? We look for ways to improve our focus, our motivation, our productivity. How can I get more shit done? How can I be more productive? We also, look at our ability to start and finish things. And all of that matters, 100% it does. But maybe we've been overlooking one of the simplest tools that we have, and that is connection. Right? Oxytocin. Not because connection is magically going to, remove the ADHD from us, okay? Not because a hug is going to replace your medication. No. But because our brains don't exist in isolation. They were designed to connect with people. And when we feel safe, understood, and connected, our nervous system settles. Our confidence grows. Our emotions often become easier to manage. Remember, there's that thing called co-regulation, right? And thanks to that close relationship between oxytocin and dopamine, we may even find ourselves feeling a little bit more motivated too. So perhaps one of the most ADHD-friendly questions we can ask ourselves isn't just, how do I get more motivation or more dopamine today? It could be, how can I create one moment of genuine connection today? All right, my friends, I'm going to leave you there. Huge love. Take care. I'll speak to you next week. Hey friend, if you want some more help navigating and thriving with ADHD and some help applying everything that you're learning here on the podcast, then head over to our website, navigatingadultadhd.com.